Swadika, thank you for joining us on Newsline for Thursday, January 30th of 2014. My name is Sandra Hanut-Saha. In today's top stories, British Foreign Secretary William Hague has urged Thailand to uphold democracy. And in business news, commercial banks stock up cash of over 100 billion baht for the Chinese New Year festival. And now on to today's headlines. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra has attended a meeting with ministers, military chiefs, and police officers to assess the daily situation of various rallies around the capital. The meeting, which took place at the office of the Permanent Secretary of Defense, was joined by Deputy Minister and Commerce Minister Niwattamrong Bunsongpaisan, Minister of Information and Communication Technology, or ICT, Group Captain Anudit Nakhonthap, and Prime Minister's Office Minister Waratep Ratanakorn, as well as Army and police representatives. No media were allowed inside the meeting room where the current political tension was discussed. The meeting was aimed at assessing the overall situation in relation to political rallies against the government by the People's Democratic Reform Committee, or PDRC. The Center for Maintaining Peace and Order, or CMPO, is set to send representatives to negotiate with the People's Democratic Reform Committee over their planned obstruction of Sunday's general election. Director General of the Department of Special Investigation, Tarit Pengdit, in his capacity as CMPO Secretary, said a working committee will be set up to hold talks with PDRC leader Suthep Thaugsuban on January 31st at Pathum 1 intersection. The decision followed a CMPO meeting on Wednesday, which was held amid tight security at the Army's Club on Wipawadi Rangsit Road. The PDRC had earlier threatened to shut down the center if it is not dissolved soon. The meeting also assigned armed forces to guard polling stations on Sunday to prevent attempts to derail the polls. The Anti-Money Laundering Office, or AMLO, will also be instructed to freeze assets of corporations financing the anti-government movement. The Pheu Thai Party has announced its support for the general election on February 2nd and called on the Election Commission to perform its duty to the best of its ability. The Pheu Thai Party has indicated that in case the number of members of Parliament does not reach the required 95% when 180 days have elapsed since the election, the Election Commission would need to carry out polling until the number is reached. However, if the effort fails, the matter will have to be forwarded to the Constitution Court for further interpretation. Suwat Liptapathanlop, chief advisor to the National Development Party, on Wednesday led party candidates in Bangkok to pay homage to revered Buddha statues at Mangkon Kamalawat Temple to make merit before Sunday's election. He said during the trip that politicians needed to help improve the current situation and to help make the general election a success. British Foreign Secretary William Hague has urged Thailand to uphold democracy as political violence escalates ahead of the general election. According to Secretary Hague, it is necessary that constitutional democracy be upheld, while expressing his hope that political leaders would find a way to mend their differences peacefully. He went on to express his concern over the fact that at least 10 people have been killed and more than 570 others injured in politically related violence in Thailand. The People's Democratic Reform Committee, or PDRC, protesters have since January 13th occupied several key intersections in Bangkok in an attempt to topple Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra, as well as to scuttle the general election scheduled for Sunday. The Department of Consular Affairs will issue ordinary passports starting from the 1st of February of 2014 onward, only at its offices in Bang Na and Pin Klao. The passports will be delivered by mail only. The Minister of Foreign Affairs announced that the Department of Consular Affairs of Bang Na office can issue 1,750 passports a day and Pinglao office 1,300 passports a day. With their current limitations on passport issuance, the department calls on people who have no urgent need during this period to delay their passport applications in order to clear the way for those with an urgent need. The department's head office at Government Complex is currently occupied by anti-government protesters. Sisakate, the province bordering Cambodia, has unveiled a plan to develop a new town designed as an engine to promote economic growth in the area. Sisakate Governor Surya Amonrod Warawut said that vendors in an old fresh market of Chongsangam would be moved to a new one in the newly constructed township between March and April. The new Chongsangam town has been fully equipped with all public facilities and is ready for anyone to move in. The province has set its heart on becoming an economic center in the area and on boosting tourism between the province and Cambodia, especially with Siem Reap province, where Angkor Wat is located. Chongsangam is one of the major border points between Thailand and Cambodia that have high economic potential. And that's the end of our first segment. We now take a short break, but coming up next, most Southeast Asian stock markets rose yesterday as Turkey's huge hike in interest rates boosted Asian share markets. Don't go away.
Open the world of information. Embrace public participation. Present Thainess to the world. New dimension of the government's public relations. The 80th anniversary of the Public Relations Department. Creative media for the society. Mobilizing Thailand towards the ASEAN community.
Welcome back to Newsline, and first in our business news, according to the Bank of Thailand, or BOT, consumers living in the capital and its vicinity still have access to their cash despite the presence of the political gatherings and the closure of several of commercial bank branches. It also confirms that there will be enough banknotes for Ang Pao, or lucky money gift, during the Chinese New Year. The BOT also indicated that last week commercial banks withdrew an additional 20 billion baht worth of banknotes in anticipation of a surge in spending during the Chinese New Year. The BOT is confident that there would be a sufficient amount of cash throughout the duration of the festival. The Bank of Thailand also touched on the effects of the ongoing political gathering in the capital, saying that currently there are 30 branches of commercial banks still operational within the rally sites. The BOT pointed out that Bangkok and its surrounding provinces has more than 1,000 branches of commercial banks. Thus, it is convinced that consumers living in the area would still have full access to their savings. It also said that each bank is working their best to distribute cash to ATMs located in the demonstration zones, citing only 30 to 40 ATM booths are reported out of order, none of which has an insufficient cash issue. The BOT reiterated that there will be enough notes for the next 2 to 3 months for a normal level of spending, which is worth around 100 to 200 billion baht a day. Nonetheless, the central bank expressed its concerns that consumer spending has declined considerably despite the New Year and the presence of Chinese New Year. Most Southeast Asian stock markets rose on Wednesday as Turkey's huge hike in interest rates boosted Asian share markets, with Thai stocks eking out small gains, helped by selective buying and exporters, but political risks ahead of election remained a drag. Thai stocks were up 0.6% by midday, with shares of canned tuna exporter Thai Union Frozen Products among outperformers, while shares of developer land and houses led losers amid concerns about the political impact on home sales. Brokers see market weakness ahead of Sunday's election, while the region remained cautious ahead of the outcome of the U.S. Federal Reserve's two-day meeting ending later on Wednesday. Indonesia outperformed the region, with Jakarta's Composite Index, or JCI, up 1.8% amid bargain hunting. Shares of Dadan Pokapan Indonesia jumped 3.8%, making them one of the top percentage gainers on the large cap index. Philippine shares climbed 1% after a two-day losing streak, led by shares of SM Prime Holdings, while Malaysian stocks rose 0.7%, with oil and gas services company MISC leading the pack. Before we take another break, let's have a look at the exchange rates and commodity prices.
For those who have Android smartphones, you can download a PRD News application by searching for PRD News English in Play Store. That way, you can stay up to date with the latest happenings in Thailand.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. The Prince Mahidol Award Conference took place on January 28th at the Chakri Throne Hall in the Grand Palace. I had the opportunity to speak with three laureates, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Professor David Ho, and Baron Peter Pio, about their achievements and their appreciation for this prestigious award. Let's have a look. Dr. Ho, Dr. Pio, and Dr. Fauci, congratulations on being chosen to receive the Prince Mahidol Award for 2013.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Dr. Fauci first. Your work has helped the world better understand how HIV destroys the body's defenses. Could you explain this to us a bit more?
Yes, the target of the virus, each virus that infects humans has different targets. The target for the virus is our lymphoid tissue, a particular type of cell called the CD4 positive T cell, a very important cell in the body's protection against other infections. What the virus does by binding to a particular receptor on the cell enters the cell and ultimately destroys it. So the lymphoid tissue and the lymphoid system, the immune system of the body, is critical to the survival of the human. This virus, in a very uncanny way, is able to infect the very part of the body's system that is supposed to protect it against other infections. So what we've learned over the years is that by destroying the body's immune system, it makes the person susceptible to a wide variety of other complicating infections that otherwise a normal person would have very little problems with. So one of the first things we understood is how the virus actually destroys the body's immune system, which is the underlying event, or what we call the pathogenic event of HIV infection.
Okay. And Dr. Ho, you pioneered the highly active antiretroviral therapy, which is called HART. Is that the acronym? Could you please tell us about that, the significance of the therapy?
Well, the approach of that particular therapy is derived from our basic understanding of HIV, how it infects the CD4 T cells that Dr. Fauci talked about, and the rate with which the virus infects those cells and replicates. And it is the understanding of the dynamics of that infection that led to the conclusion that the only way we're going to corner this virus is to use a combination of drugs. And that's because the virus fundamentally replicates so rapidly, mutates so rapidly, that drugs if used singly would lead to resistant virus right away. And so that approach was derived from the basic understanding, and in fact, when tested in the mid-1990s, showed that it was effective and durable.
So people can be treated early on now and can live relatively long lives, is that right?
I think it is generally believed by many in the field, including those of us here, that it is no longer a death sentence to have HIV, and in fact it's quite manageable, quite controllable, and we expect our treated patients to live a fairly normal lifespan.
And Dr. Peel, you've worked very hard to raise global awareness about HIV and AIDS. Can you tell us more about your efforts?
When this epidemic started and was expanding relentlessly over the world, including here in Thailand, we didn't have the science, we didn't have the tools to stop it, except for the condom, which was very effective, as was shown here in Thailand. And there was no leadership, no political leadership, and there were no programs on the ground. So we had to move on all fronts at the same time. Science has given us treatment, has given us new ways of for preventing HIV infection, like giving the drugs before exposure, male circumcision, and so on. And also, there are now very active programs on the ground, and the leadership has been there. And that has resulted in a major decline in new infections across the world, including in Thailand, and far fewer people dying from HIV. So great achievements, but we're not there yet. AIDS is not over.
And how would you rate global awareness right now?
I think that it's a mixed bag now. There is in more and more places the feeling that it's over. So, and we've got treatment, and so we don't have to pay attention to prevention, to safer sex. And I think the key all over Asia is now that we need to reinvigorate leadership at the top of the state, but also in communities, and making sure that there's particularly more attention to HIV prevention. And secondly, that we should be mindful that there are communities out there with very high infection rates. Men who have sex with men, injecting drug users, some sex workers. So we need to involve them and to make sure there are specific programs for them. Thirdly, I would say, let's involve young people, and people who start their sexual career and experiment and are also at risk. And finally, there's still enormous stigma and discrimination associated with HIV. And that's something that all of us can work on as well.
Right. And Dr. Ho, you're working on a vaccine right now. Can you tell us about the progress and how close are we to having that?
Well, I've been working on vaccine for a number of years without success. And this has been a huge challenge. While we continue to work on vaccine development, my group is also in parallel trying to develop other approaches to HIV prevention, including the use of drugs and antibodies. It's not clear that we're going to get to a vaccine anytime soon, and therefore I think it is prudent to work on additional approaches, and in the end it's likely to take a mixed bag of approaches to curtail the spread of this virus.
Right. And Dr. Fauci, do you think enough is being done around the world right now, besides Dr. Ho's vaccine, to eradicate HIV and AIDS from the world?
Well, we can always do more. I think if you ever ask a scientist or a public health official, is enough being done? The answer is universally no. We always need to do more. But I think the effort is substantial. We can be encouraged by programs such as the PEPFAR program, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, the Global Fund, some non-government organizations like the Clinton Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So a lot is being done. From a scientific standpoint, There's a major investment, but we need to continue to keep it up. And I think one of the lessons that I know all my colleagues here would like to make sure people hear is that although we have made substantial, breathtaking progress in this disease, it is not over yet, and we should not for a moment lax our effort or decrease the pressure that we put on both the scientific approach as well as the public health approach. There's still a very, very long way to go.
Right. And Dr. Pio, what challenges do you see that scientists around the world face?
Well, scientists face scientific challenges, and the number one, I would say, is developing a vaccine. And I hope it's not the Holy Grail, because we've never reached the Holy Grail. And so, but in terms of ending this epidemic, I strongly believe that we need that vaccine, even if I'm optimistic that we can do better now. Secondly is finding a cure, so that people will not have to take highly effective drugs for the rest of their life, but at some point can stop and the virus is gone or is fully under control. And then there are the challenges that we as a global community face, and that is to do with continuing leadership, continuing funding, and making sure that AIDS is not slipping the agenda, and that we are really focusing our efforts there where the virus is being spread. And that can be young people, that can be men who have sex with men, sex workers, depends a bit on the country.
Right. And Dr. Ho, tell us about how you're feeling about being chosen to receive this award.
I'm feeling very happy, humbled, honored. It is a great recognition. The Prince Mahidol Award reminds me of what the Prince actually did decades ago in modernizing medicine in Thailand and executing public health measures throughout the country. So I am deeply moved by this honor.
And Dr. Pio, what are your thoughts on receiving the award?
Well, just like David, very greatly honored and actually moved also. I think it's not only a recognition for myself and my wonderful colleagues here, but also for the efforts of thousands of scientists, of community workers, public health officials, and leaders in this field. So that's also how I see it, that the Prince Mahidol Award is recognizing that this is one of the greatest scientific and public health challenges of our time.
And Dr. Fauci, could you also add to?
Again, obviously very appreciative and very humbled, reminding us that when we get recognition, as Peter said, science is not a totally individual thing. What I did was based on what people before me did. I happened to be getting an award, but you wouldn't get an award unless there was an entire history of scientists who brought you to the point where you are now. So I feel very appreciative, but recognizing that it's really part of a historic team of scientists over many years.
Right. Congratulations again, and
thank you
so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was our interview with the recipients of the Prince Mahidol Award, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Ho, and Dr. Pio, for their work in HIV and AIDS to fight against this horrible disease. Thank you for watching Newsline. For any comments or suggestions, please feel free to email them to us at newsline.nbt@gmail.com. We're going to say goodbye with an exciting lion dance on very tall poles in Uthai Thani province. And it's to mark the arrival of Chinese New Year tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. I'm Sandra Hanut Saha. Sawadee ka.